Hello, this is Sandy Ives, and this is our storytelling assignment. As I was going through this, the first question asked if I felt disloyal by this process, or did it feel free and open? And I would say it felt free and open. It was actually a great opportunity for me to take some time with my mom and my dad and really understand a little bit about my family, which I don't know. I think through this process I realized how much I don't know about my family because there was so many breaks and so many different issues. Although I always thought I lived in a pretty normal family. My immediate family was very loving and supportive, and so this was quite eye-opening to me. The themes that stand out for me as I reflected on this formation journey was just how eye-opening it was, like I said, and how both sides of my family had great challenges. My mom's side, the biggest glaring thing to me was how my mother's mom and dad both were considered black sheeps of their family, and how they ended up coming together. Glenn, being a womanizer, alcoholic, brought a lot of that dysfunction into his home, and then ended up breaking up the home, where my mother ended up raising her two younger sisters, as well as my grandmother, who was a very anxious and very negative person, from what my mother said, was always thinking someone was out to get her. So these two very volatile people came together, and my mother was a product of that, who was always a peacemaker. She never wanted conflict. My dad, on the other side, came from, this hardworking farm family who seemed really close and connected, but a tragedy hit them when one of my dad's older sisters was molested by one of the boyfriends, and eventually became the husband, and how that shockingly to me became something that was hidden. And so what jumped out to both sides of this family, I feel like I'm jumping around a little bit, but is that both of these sides of the family had these generational brokenness, and that they had family secrets. I remember my dad saying years ago how my grandmother, his mother, felt that what was problems of the family should stay within the family. And that was also the same case in my mother's family, because when my mother took her two younger sisters out of the home because of the alcohol, because they were going to be removed anyway, she wanted them to be raised with family. It was my grandmother and grandfather who wanted nothing more to do with my mother because she had embarrassed them in the sight of the community. So there's all this avoidance and this cutoffs in families. After the sexual abuse in my dad's family, it was kind of buried for years, until later, when my aunt was in her early 40s, she tried to commit suicide, and then the whole can of worms came out. And personally, some things had come out too, with other members of the family, and it just broke that family up. And so really the family that I grew up with felt very small but very close, so I really didn't know a lot about this. And again, my parents kind of buried it, secrets, passing that forward. And I think it was coming out of a sense of protection of their kids. But what I see after some of this, this is very new to me, this type of family systems thinking, is that those secrets fester, and they don't help people move forward. They actually hold them back and cripple them. And so many triangles, this is too short to go into any of that, but just a lot of dysfunction as families. So the question is, in 3 says, has any of this formation journey led you to a current sense of call or vocation? And I think it's just reaffirmed, because I've always felt called to be to equip and encourage families, and I'm even more now to see this because I feel empathetic. Another question down here says, what was one of the gifts that came from this family, from your family. And I would say empathy. I see that from looking at how I was raised and how much I had lost, and how much families struggle with certain things today. I'm very empathetic. Another question was, what was the biggest challenge this family handed me? And I would say, I understand a lot more why I'm such an anxious, and I lead sometimes from a sense of stress to intense stress to fix things, to fix the problem. There's my mother coming out of me, the fixer, the pleaser. My dad, do it by the book. That has been passed down to me, and that I'm seeing now is those things were more generational. It was handed down to them. So this anxiety, this intense emotional response to things, and I see it very prevalently in my family with my own son, who has been a challenge for us as a teenager, and I see how I have led from that, and how I sometimes want to avoid the conflict, or I lead out of that stressful position. Number 7, it says, if you're ministering to a family like this, what would you ask, where would you pay most attention to? And I would say to press into those difficult topics, to address those family secrets head on. Obviously it takes, as you unravel that, you have to be gentle so that, there's not creating more damage. But I think that family secrets need to be weeded out earlier, because if they fester, then they become a potentially life altering, leading to death in some instances. The avoidance issue, very, very key to what I think families need, and what this family, if I was counseling my actual family, I would say, seek restorative, step-by-step processes that feel loving and safe, but address these secrets and these avoidance issues. Break these triangles up a little bit. Yeah, I guess that's really all I have to say about that. I think you can sense that this has been a process that has led to more questions than answers for me. I think that's the biggest thing. And so one of the questions asked, what is the next step for you? And I think personally, in fact, I just went this week on Wednesday. I sought out a counselor, a friend of mine who I saw, 4 years ago when my son was struggling, and I think that it's important for me to know more about myself, know more about my past, and how I was formed, and how that forms me as a leader, as a parent, as a ministry leader, as a family director, and how I can lead from the healthiest place I can. Even though I'm not in crisis, I feel that it's important that we really look at how we were formed and why, we react in certain ways. And so now I have a little better idea why I get so stressed out so quickly, because I think it's just been intrinsically wired in me. And I think those things can be worked on and eradicated, not fully in this lifetime, but can be worked towards. And then there was a few other things I wanted to state. Maybe not. I might have gone through all my notes. So I did the notes, and so I hope that this will create some conversations between us as we do our responses. And like I said, this has been eye-opening and sometimes heart-wrenching, and but ultimately it felt freeing to know a little bit more about my family. Okay, that's for me. Thanks.